All right, so last week we just kind of went over some of what was the last week's topic we went through? Was the
Basically the where she sails. So making sure that we're using the string test.
that's right, rounding the course, the marks, and things like that.
Yep,
So
20.
this week's actually a harder topic because I think there's a lot we can talk about, and I think it can get a bit confusing. So we'll try to take it step by step and read through the rules, and then we have an open discussion. And just if you have any questions, and we'll try to do. And again, I'm not an expert. Yes, I do this a lot, and I think I have a good grasp of the rules and the execution of the rules. So with that said, I have a little presentation going on here. So this picture right here is us doing the 24 worlds in Porto Cervo. It's not a bad place to sail, as you can see.
Beautiful.
That was with Alex Schaefer. Let's get on to this is going to be Mark Room, and we'll break this down a little bit, and we're going to start at the top and kind of work down a little bit, and I think you'll see why. Okay, Mark Room. So it's Rule 18, and it's quite extensive. So we're just going to break it down a little bit and talk about the things and make sure the concepts are all there, right? Applies when boats, when they are required to leave a mark on the same side, and at least one of them is in the zone, right? So mark room comes from, in our typical situations, windward lewards, or really kind of any mark that you're coming in that everybody's rounding to the same side, right? If you have two fleets and one's rounding it one way and one's rounding it the other way, mark room does not apply. So this is if we're going around the same mark in the same direction, okay? When it does not apply is here, between boats on opposite tack. So if a boat's coming in on starboard and port, there is no mark room, right, on a beat to windward. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Boats on opposite tacks when the proper course at the mark for one, but not for both of them, is to tack. We'll talk about that one too. Between a boat approaching a mark and one leaving it, or if the mark is in continuous obstruction. So we're just going to kind of go through this a little bit. It's a long, lengthy, and there's reasons why we have 1, 2, 3, 4 little segments of it. But let's just start with that first opposite. Let's just walk through a little bit. I have a couple little diagrams here, right? What's really nice, right? We have zones, right, for boat lengths. The good thing is the Vacaroses we have will let us know when we touch the zone. They'll turn, I think it's that purple color. So you can kind of get a sense of when you're in the zone and when the other boats are in the zone. But really, what we're looking at here is when the boats enter the zone. I don't have I didn't put a generic one in here, but we'll kind of use this one here as a generic. That's not the one I wanted. But anyhow, you can see here, what do I want to do here? Let's back this one up a little bit. Right now, if you look at the number ones, when the boats are entering the zone, right? One boat's on an opposite tack. The green boat does not have an overlap. They don't have rights in here, right? Because they're on opposite tacks. If they're on the same tack, we can use this one. Where do I have it? Oh, I don't have it. I'm sorry. On the same tack, if they enter the zone and they're overlapped, then the outside boat have to give the inside boat room, right? That's pretty standard. Everybody understands that one, right?
Yep.
It's when there's a different scenario, and that's what I have here. Is I have these different scenarios that we're going to walk through. So, okay, leave the mark on the same side, at least one of them in the zone. Okay. Now, where we get in trouble is when there's scenarios like this, right? Boats are coming in on starboard, boats are coming in on port, and they're tacking inside of the zone. Okay. And the way the rule works here, this boat here, the yellow boat's coming in, is above close hauled, correct? Close hauled would be kind of this where those dashed lines are. So even though yellow gets in here, the blue boat can tack and still round the mark inside the zone, inside of these tacking inside. They've established an overlap inside the zone, and that's okay as long as the boat does not what? Go past close hold, right?
Mhm.
So in this scenario, red boat's coming in, they've been on close hold, green boat comes in, tacks, and red boat has to avoid green boat by going above close hold. So in this case, the green boat is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the red
But
boat can
Marty,
protest.
you would be aiming at the green boat if you were the red boat.
So, well, let's back up here. Let's go to there. That's the scenario here, right? Right. And the thing about that is you're allowed to do that, but again, once they've completed their tack, right? Once they've completed their tack, then you have to avoid them.
Yeah, but if
Okay?
you're aiming down at them and
Yep.
and then they complete their tack, and now after you've aimed down at them, now you have to go to close haul to avoid them. How's that work out?
Close hold is fine as long as you don't do what?
Go
Go
above close
past.
haul.
Right. So you can reach in, they can tack, and you can harden up as long as you don't go past close hold, they are fine.
So then you need to have an idea if you're headed or lifted, if you're coming in on port, or if they're headed or lifted, and that way you have a better idea if you were to tack, if they would go above close haul to avoid you.
Right. It's really hard to do to gauge. You can tell if they're reaching or not. How much? Really, really hard to do, right? And how forward can you complete the tack before they have to alter course? That's a port starboard, right? You have to complete their tack, and then but if they have to avoid you before you completed your tack, you're wrong.
Right.
Right?
Now that's
So,
a port starboard situation. That's what I did to you last regatta. You're welcome.
yep, exactly. Got in there just fine, as unhappy as I was. So this is where people misunderstand, right? So this one here, right? Yellow's really reaching in, and as long as blue tacks and yellow does not have to alter course until blue finishes tacking, it's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's why you want to. That's why when I talk a lot about closing the early, if you can reach, like if you reach down where green 1 is and you got a little closer ley line and made it harder, then there's a lot less arguing than if you're reaching in late. So it's good to close the door a little bit earlier as long as you don't have bad air. That's usually the problem, is there's boats directly in front of you and you don't want to go lower to close and get bad air and then maybe not make the mark. But this scenario here happens this here. I mean,
all the time.
There'll be 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boats will get in here all the time. If the green boat stays on this course coming into the windward mark.
Now who's likely to win the protest? And even if in the event, let's say that the port boat truly had room, but the starboard boat claimed that he had to go above close haul.
The burden's on the port boat.
Saw if he did, but who's likely to win that?
The burden's that the port can prove that they did not cause the other boat to go past close hold. So the onus is on the port tacker.
Yeah. So it's likely that the starboard boat will win that. Right.
Yeah. Correct. But what's really funny is, I would say in big, large fleets, I bet you there's probably 10 fouls, 15 fouls at the first windward mark of every race. I mean, it's nobody really wants to protest, and all right, so this one other guy gets in ahead of me, it's not a huge deal. But you also need to take that in consideration as a strategy. You could come in there late and be able to at least get a low lane and get around the mark, instead of ducking 20 or 30 boats. When we're in a small 7-boat fleet, you don't have that. You really have to really kind of duck that starboard boat coming in, because they're going to be on ley line. There's no reason for them to be high if there's nobody really to windward of them, right? Everybody should be getting down to ley line in clear air to avoid the port people coming in and just getting in front.
So you're saying, and when there's a whole pack, a lot of them are going to try to go high anyway.
Well,
so there might be a hole.
Yeah, because think about it. What goes through your head? If I tack on ley line and there's a boat that's coming on port and he's ahead of me and he goes 1/2 boat length past ley line and then tacks, he totally tacked on top of me. Right? So the lower you are in the pecking order at the windward mark, the farther out you have to go on that starboard ley line. Right? And that's exactly what happens. So the small fleet windward mark is different than the large fleet windward mark by quite a lot for that particular reason. So this is an interesting scenario here, right? So you got 1 coming in, 2 coming in, both these guys tack. Is there a foul here? Did yellow foul green? No, right?
No.
Not really, right? It does not look like they're past close hold here. To me, if 3 is not past close hold in the zone here, then yellow and blue are just fine.
No, that's because I did that exact move to somebody in Pensacola, and they were going to protest the shit out of me. They said I couldn't do it, and it was exactly what this is.
So Alex, 90% of the time to win this protest, you have to call to sail trim, because what people say is my sail luffed, but my sail luffed is not the rule. Poor sail trim does not justify above close haul.
Right, that's true.
And that's where you have to look at the jib trim. I told you the story last week, didn't I, where we were coming into the windward mark and umpires only were judging us, and a guy literally came in front of us, tacked right in front of us inside the zone. The judge wasn't looking at us, so I eased the jib, and it was luffing a little bit, and I said, protest. And what did the judge do? He looked at the jib, saw it was luffing, and flagged him, even though my angle was not above close hold. So back to the point there is, you got to make the argument, well, my jib's luffing, well, it's not trimmed. And I think Seth was exactly spot on that.
Okay.
And that's where video nowadays is becoming way more important to have on the boat. That we have on the IC, we always use a 360. And, at least it gives you, if somebody does protest you, at least it gives you something to work with. And the trackers give you something to work with when you're in and outside of the zone also. And that's what's nice too.
So, Marty, the last few regattas, they've been putting them in the SIs, the major ones, that the Vacros nor video is admissible in a protest.
Which is I would say that's not the norm anymore. It used to be all the time, but a lot of the times now it's not. You're allowed to use video. So I'm a little surprised I didn't see it in that. And for the 24s like Davis Island?
No, qualifiers. They're putting ESIs that they are not admissible.
I'm surprised about that.
Yeah, the last 5 or 6 major championships, national or qualifiers, all of them same thing, and they make a big deal of it at the the skippers meeting. But what you can do is use this data, show the video, and go up to a competitor, show it to them, and most of them don't know it. So you can usually get somebody to withdraw or take a penalty with that.
Well, the worst case scenario is you can come in and say, hey, we've reviewed our tracker data. We know exactly when we entered the zone. We know we tacked 10 seconds out. We know we travel at 7 feet per second. And so that put us at 4.5 boat lengths to the zone. I've done that quite frequently. Knowing your boat speed per second, how much you travel through the water, is always a very good thing. A lot of good judges we'll know that. Well, how long when you entered the zone did it take for you to get around the mark? Well, at 7 knots, it took me X amount of seconds, per boat length. So it should have taken us, 15 seconds to get from the zone to the mark. Things like that. But everybody's perspective is a little different of the zone, and being able to talk about time and distance and seconds really shows that you understand, what the boat travels and how long it takes to travel that speed. But it's always good. I'm really surprised because a lot of the stuff I do now, they haven't. You've been able to bring it in a lot, actually. So.
Yeah, so big boats and PHRF and ORC, it's now becoming relevant, but most major one design, oddly enough, they're in the skippers meetings telling you can't do it.
No, I bet you that's going to change.
It needs to.
Yeah.
Well, so actually the issue that the argument one way or the other is there's no standardized measurement as to where the Vacros has to be mounted on the boat. Some people have it mounted flush mounted to the mast. Some people have it on a big carbon bracket, so it's 8 inches back. So what they determined was the start and finish distance, it doesn't matter where the compass is mounted, is the same. Everybody has to sail the same race course. If you have an advantage on start, you have a disadvantage on finish. But in a protest, boat on boat, that is not true because one could be 6 inches further than the other.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm sure that's going to get, there should be 2 offsets and only 2 ways to do it at the end of the day,
Yeah, everybody should have to put their compass
and
in
they're
the same
not
spot.
really, and again, 6 inches is,
nominal.
It's like, it's not even a second, it's like a half a second, through the water.
The GPS isn't that accurate.
And the GPS isn't that accurate at the end of the day. But again, when you're talking 3 boat lengths, and you can see when you tack, that margin of error is going to be pretty minimal, not even a problem. I've used my GPS watch before too, actually, the data to prove when we tacked and stuff like that. So it's there, and it just, and again, it can be a conversation with the person protesting you too, right? Saying, hey, I've reviewed it. We feel pretty strong that we tacked. We sailed for another 30 seconds, which puts us at 3.5 boat lengths. I'm happy to share that with you, and I think that's the way that we should handle these situations. If we have something we can share, then share it, and if somebody's angry enough to go to the room, then you have to go and do that. But I also think going to the room is one of the better ways to do it. We live in a sport that I don't think a lot of times, I think people take advantage of people knowing they won't protest, and this is a perfect example where that does happen quite a lot. More than you would possibly imagine. Possibly, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So
when we had a similar situation where we had a windward rounding with Mustang, and we fouled them, and then immediately before we could even get away from them, they popped their chute and hit our boat. So I turned around and said, "Hey, protesting you." And so now they had a protest. He said, "Oh, we'll look at the camera." So they dropped their flag because they saw that they hit us. So I don't know. We didn't even have, we weren't even around the mark yet when they fouled us. So we fouled them, then they fouled us. So I guess we could both protest each other or both withdraw like we did. Neither of us protested. So that's correct. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good way. I think that's a good way of handling that situation.
Mm-hmm.
You can always be subject to a third-party protest at the end of the day, right? So if I saw that,
I would protest both of you.
You could both get thrown out, but
okay.
It doesn't typically happen. But again, if it's the last race of the regatta and you're in third and that guy's in first or second,
Fourth.
And whatever, right? You can.
But then the guy in first is behind both of you.
Yeah,
you can absolutely. I've had 2 people where you foul each other, and you both shake it off because it's bad for both of your races, and you move on. but then every single boat behind you, technically, that's unfair too.
Yeah, we
They don't cancel out.
We did the Worlds in Annapolis, the J70 Worlds in Annapolis, and there was
So
on the water.
you could protest both boats, huh? Wow.
For not doing their penalties.
100%. 100%. We did another sore spot for me. We did the J70 Worlds in Annapolis, and there was on the water judges. And on about the fifth race, the Argentinians would always come inside, overlap, and just crush everybody. And I remember at the Leeward Mark, they cannonballed in, and they were just going to go in there. So I closed the door enough that I hit them to prove a point. And the judge saw it. And there was a protest, and we went to arbitration. And I said, these guys, this is the third time this has happened. These guys came in. They came in at the Leeward Mark and didn't have room and just stuck it in there. And did you hit contact? Yes. And then the judge said, well, I saw this. And here's something very interesting to note. How are we doing on time? We're almost done here.
You're okay. We started a little late. It's good.
Yeah. And we're going to do the downwind stuff too. We can continue on this on the next one. So the arbitration judge says, I saw this, and yes, the Argentinians were wrong, and yes, you did not avoid a collision. So both of you could take a penalty right now, or both.
He went after you for 14.
Yeah. Now, he was right. I did. But the fact that he had previous information in this scenario, he could not have been an arbitrator. And I could have got back and fought that one, but I did not know that. So the arbitrator can't have a biased opinion, right? Which he did, or any opinion of the situation. So that was very interesting. Yeah, he should not have.
So when they ask about jury selection, I did learn that lesson the hard way as well. I typically ask, were any of you out on the water? What race course were you on if there's multiple circles? And I specifically want judges that were not even on our circle.
Right.
If that's an option.
If it's an option. Most of the time it isn't. But there's also arbitration, right? Things like that. So there's a lot to go on there. So again, I know we've only kind of scratched the surface about it, but I think it's important that everybody understands that, really if you're tacking in there and the boat goes above close hauled, the jib's trimmed in, and they're pinching, that's above close hauled, then they've definitely fouled. And I think, other than
Marty,
that,
one thing for a next one, or if you want to keep going. So you now have, let's say somebody tacks in, you're 3 wide at the weather mark, and the outside boat with clean air almost always tries to close off to the offset, and they go for an early jibe or they go to slam the door. 90% of the time that inside boat can usually hit that outside boat and avoids them, and they just call it no contact. But the overlap was established within 3 boat lengths. So even if they jibe, if that inside boat has to avoid, that is a foul, and almost nobody knows that one.
Yep.
That second 3 boat length applies to an offset.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter where it's established. Even if they jet ahead, if you catch back up while they're jibing or doing whatever, you still have the rights. So you may want to bring that one up in one of your little pretty pictures. That's one of the next biggest mistakes.
No, I like it.
And on that same note, I had a situation. I'm unclear on a situation. When you come into the Leeward gate and you're on a port tack and you enter the zone with the same, overlapped with a starboard boat that's coming into that same gate, and they give you room, and they're coming with more speed. So when you round the mark, you got to round it tighter, and then they come up underneath you. So do you have to stay up, or can you sail deeper, or are they allowed to bring you up?
No, once they establish that leeward position. So if you round the mark and they're faster and they get below you and hook you, you have no rights at that point. They're leeward boat. It's no longer.
You got to go up.
Yeah, it's no longer proper course around the mark.
Mm-hmm.
They give you room to round it, even though you're driving around. Mm-hmm. Then it's just a basic windward leeward.
Let me. I have. If we still want to just do a few more minutes here, I have I have some pictures of that. So give me just 1 second here.
Oh, that's
See if I
awesome.
can do
Yeah,
this.
Alex, best strategy is when somebody hooks you like that, while you have any speed at all, I'm instantly looking for my tack out.
Yeah, which we are, but
And you
it doesn't
guys,
usually work out that there's too many boats, so you can't tack out.
Yeah.
what do you guys see here?
Oh, sounds like you were in the front then.
Yes.
Yeah, we see your screen.
Do you see this lured, this
Yep.
Rule 18 lured? Okay. So what's happening here, right? Let's just purely look at the zone for a second, right? So the green boat enters the zone, right?
Right.
And
That's
you're
it. That's
going,
exactly what I'm talking about. Right.
it's a right gate, right turn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the overlap was probably established halfway downwind when the green boat jibed onto starboard, right? So right now, the red boat at the number 2 spot has room at the mark.
Correct.
So now 3 just has to do, and give room to the red. The green has to give room to the red to get around.
Right.
And then, so what you're saying in a scenario is when you're slowing down.
Because I got to turn tighter, and inside you got to turn tighter.
Correct.
And starboard's going to come with speed, deeper, wide, and come up cleanly with speed.
Yeah. So what happens here? This is actually very hard to do. Green, if you are green, you really need to go super deep, almost jibe, stay in the zone so you don't screw up any more overlaps, right? Which I'll show you in a second, so that you can get behind red tight with speed. So you have to really slow down a lot.
I'm talking about, but
rounding too wide.
But if green comes with speed, so what happened to me was I did the same thing to Jaime, by the way, and then somebody else did it to me. Is I was the port tack boat coming in tight, and I had to turn. He didn't give me that much room, the starboard boat. So when I rounded super tight, I slowed down, and he hooked me because he came in fast. And so
to leeward, you mean he hooked to leeward?
Yeah, he hooked to leeward. So, and can he bring me up? Or not?
Just a close haul.
Yeah, did he bring you?
Right.
Yeah, like I wanted a foot more to get more speed coming out of that because, but
he didn't have to give you that.
You're subject to him, but he can only go close haul. Right. He's got to go proper course.
Right.
So. And he has to give you room and opportunity to stay. Once that overlap's established to leeward, right? Then he just can't jam it in there and hit you.
Right. No, he didn't do that, but he did bring me up enough to slow me down and get under me.
All right.
Which I did to Jaime.
Right.
Right.
Do you guys see this the last little downwind chart here?
Yep, we can see
the gray boats. Okay, so if the gray boats were coming downwind the whole time, one entered the zone, the gray boat green, the gray boats don't have an overlap. On yellow, the gray boats do not have room. On the blue boat, does the blue boat have to give the gray boats room?
His transom's open to it when he enters the zone.
Yeah. So on
he's giving the weather mark room.
So when blue jives over, they're in the zone. Gray has established that they have rights, and red is definitely the same way. So gray should go behind yellow here, and blue and red should give them room, right?
Okay.
Red must give away, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So very hard to do, though, right?
You need a good tactician for that.
Well, and
when there's a cluster of boats coming through, because it's hard for the driver to eyeball all that.
I don't know. If I looked over and saw that gray boat dead downwind, I would absolutely send it as blue.
Yeah. Red made the huge mistake of being on the outside, right? You want to get to the top of the circle and maybe even high early jibe to make sure the goal is to have nobody on the inside of you, right? And the second most lost place on the race course is the leeward mark. So, even yellow, blue, and red have not done a very good job here. in my mind, to make sure they have an exit out of the leeward mark and go straight for a minute. So you never want to be where red is. You don't really want to be where blue is, and yellow is not preferred. But it's really hard if you get in that middle zone downwind at the last little bit. You always have to make a decision halfway downwind. Do I want to go left gate or right gate, and then fight for the inside overlap?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then we'll talk. There's a lot more to talk about on the on the little rule variations we'll go over next time on this 18 too. 18. Rule 2, part 18.
Well, this is perfect. This is awesome, Marty. So we'll do this next week. We can take up on the same thing if you're willing to keep going with it.
Sure. I should be around next week's a holiday, right? Monday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Memorial Day.
Should we move it to Tuesday?
We can.
Modified Tuesday?
That'd be good. Yeah, I'll put it out there to everybody.
Hey, Marty, once we finish our full series, we should teach people how to actually do a protest, what they can and can't say, what gives it away.
Yeah.
And then more importantly, what justifies a real protest.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think to me, it's very important. And it's what I think a lot of people leave the sport because we don't do a good job of it. And if people don't feel like they're being treated fairly, I blame a lot of the pro sailors for, taking advantage of people and just, saying.
They walk in and they'll say anything to lie to win. So you either have to learn to lie with them and it's terrible, or we need a better way of enforcing the rules.
Yeah. Well,
and more importantly is the more people that understand it, the more witnesses there are to every single incident. And then their pro bullshit doesn't work anymore.
Right. And then we back each other up is really what happens, right?
I think Baccaros is going to be adding AI video, so it just automatically determines who's right and wrong. It says, you got a penalty, turn.
It happens.
Sounds expensive.
I mean, they have it in the America's Cup stuff that are instant. I mean, they we'll get tools that will help us. And, it's interesting to hear, Seth, and I didn't know a lot of the major events were still that way without video, but
I can give you SIs from both J24 Nationals, actually J70 Nationals, the last one. It was in the SIs as well for that. And it said explicitly that video nor back rows data was admissible. The North Americans, J24 North Americans, same thing, wasn't admissible. We have.
Well, this is awesome. Thank you, Marty, for putting this together.
I'll get a little better with the slides for sure here. So at least I got my background sorted, and we got slides this time.
Yeah, I like the background. It's great.
Is
that your
Marty,
what
we should do is a separate one where we do mock trials, where basically me or you act as judge. We get a couple people on, and we have them go through active things that may have happened, and have both people present it.
Yep. And I can probably get a judge.
You could probably get real judges.
Yeah, which is always great. I mean, again, I think I tell you, I call Tom Rindo all the time.
That's awesome.
And ask questions, and he's been very good about. Again, I'm here to make the sport better for everybody. I don't.
Well, we need our Davis Island people not to get bullied though by all of the hired crew that just go in and lie.
Well, this is how we do it, right?
Yep.
I think you're right. So,
nope.
Nadia, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you guys. All right, we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks, Marty. Appreciate it, y'all.
Bye.
Okay.
Look, both hands.
Bye.
Love hands.
Bye.
Thanks, boys.